Alright, Heidi-ho again. Fireside chats continue. Thursday talks. Nah, we're not gonna commit ourselves to doing anything on any particular day. It's not my style. But anyway, alright, so like I said, I was gonna make a video on the Catholic school thing, you know, bit of my childhood there, a little background actually, kind of, arm, is, I guess, kind of a past tense vlogging. I don't know what the hell it is, but in either case, we'll go through some of my early childhood fun times that might shed a little bit of a light of what I became later on in my 20s and whatever, and why I'm not into organized religion. And let me say right off the bat that, you know, I have no problem with what people want to believe in, whatever it takes to get them through the day. You know, whatever makes their life right is fine by me. I just don't want it pushed on me, okay? I don't want to hear about Jesus. I don't want to hear about Muhammad. I don't want to hear about Buddha. I don't want to hear about, you know, any of it. None of it. It's up to you to do your own thing. It should be a private thing. With me, you know, I do have a spirituality, but it's not in any organized religious form, and it certainly isn't going by ancient books that were written by people in the desert, you know, and I'm not putting anybody down here. Like I said, whatever it takes, everybody needs their own beliefs to get through the day, and that's fine with me. You know, I have no problem with it. But like I said, I just don't try to convince me, don't try to push me, don't try to talk me into your belief or way of believing, don't try to rationalize it to me. It's not going to work. All it's going to do is, you know, kind of upset me that you think I'm dumb enough to believe in what you believe in. You know, look, if I say I believe that the Harley is the best motorcycle in the world, and, you know, it's the only true motorcycle and everything else. Now, look, you know, a lot of people on the metric bikes or the German bikes or English bikes are going to have a problem with that. And I don't blame them. So, making that statement on my behalf would be improper, because it's the way I look at it. Well, I don't believe that either. You know, been a mechanic all my life and a machinist. I know that these are just machines. They all break down. There's no one true, you know, thing. So, getting into it, now that I've made that clear, I hope, and not get a bunch of comments about how I should find Jesus or Muhammad or whoever. So, all right, let me go back to the beginning here, kind of. I was born and raised in Germany in 1957, and I grew up in a town called Langenhagen, which is right on the outskirts of Hanover, and I grew up there. And literally I grew up with my grandmother and my uncle, who were like a mother and a father to me, since I don't have any memory of my mother at all as a really tiny baby. And she had moved to America, you know, by the time I had any actual recollection of her or anything like that. So basically, and I'm not a military brat, I am a real German. My family Bible, I think, goes back to the 1500s. And Ripley, get back here. Ripley! No. Come here. Sorry about that. So my lineage goes back to the 1500s in that part of the world right there. And probably further back than that, but I don't have any, you know, anything written down or knowledge of it. I do know that I had some, what they call working royalty in my past in Germany, or that area, and you know, so it's, yeah, you know, I was born and raised there, and I spoke German, of course. You know, I didn't know how to speak English or anything like that. Well, I guess my grandmother, being that she was getting older, and my uncle was going to the university and getting his doctorate, and I think he moved out of the house, and I think my grandmother finally told my mother that, well, she had to buck up and take responsibility for me as a child, which I'm sure was very inconvenient for her, which she showed me that all through my childhood and growing up with her, that I was very inconvenient to her. But, you know, she was a model at the time, high fashion or whatever you want to call it, very pretty. She was doing the, you know, marrying millionaires and rich people and dating and the whole nightclub scene and whatever back in those days. So she brought me over to this country, and I think I was about 7 or 8, and that was actually the first time I'd met my mother that I can recall meeting her. So, you know, I talked to her on the phone a couple times before that, and, you know, everybody was kind of proud of her back then that she got out of Germany and made a life for herself in America, and it was all that kind of impressive shit going on. So I came over there, and in her infinite wisdom, put me into a Polish Catholic school, and this was up, I believe, in Ramsey, New Jersey. She was up in New York and New Jersey area back then, and now I still didn't know how to speak English. She put me in there, and Polish had, you got to remember, this was only, you know, right post-World War II, and there was still a lot of animosity towards the Germans for World War II by the Poles. And, you know, I of course didn't have any idea of this. I knew that my grandfather was killed in the war on the Eastern Front. He was in the Luftwaffe, and my grandmother spoke highly of him, but I never got any, you know, bad vibes about it or anything else. So when I came to this country and got put into this Polish Catholic school, these nuns were about as brutal and nasty to me as could possibly be. I couldn't communicate with them, and I heard the word Nazi a lot, and I didn't know what that meant. That word never got spoken as I was growing up. There was, you know, I knew my grandfather was in the Luftwaffe, and that was about it, you know, and the word Nazi never came up. So, you know, they would do things like lock me in a closet, you know, and turn the lights off in school after school and shit like that. They would give me homework that I had no way to complete because I couldn't read or write English. I was purely speaking German, trying to learn. My mother was pissed at me, yelling at me all the time, beating the shit out of me because I wasn't doing good at school, which, duh. And, you know, so, even things like going to the bathroom. You know, I remember one time I was, you know, struggling around, got my hand up. I wanted to leave the room, and these nuns would start to, to beat the shit out of me, make me sit down again until I pissed my pants. This is the kind of people that I had to deal with growing up. Not to mention a few babysitters my mother got while she was off partying in the middle of the night. And, those assholes would beat the shit out of me because I couldn't understand their instructions or what they wanted me to do. I was a good kid before that all happened. I mean, I really was. Other than I was told that as a toddler I ate about a quart bucket of wheel bearing grease and never got sick. They should have known what I was going to become in life. Anyway, going on. So even after school, I think the nuns probably antagonized the other kids, but I'd be walking home from school, and I'd hear the word Nazi, and about 4 or 5 boys would come and they would just beat the hell out of me. I mean, kick me in the balls, just pound me. All my paperwork would get lost, everything. This happened on a regular basis to where I hid in the woods, running home from school to avoid anything. And then after a while, they got hip to that. And by that time, I was getting sick and tired of this shit, and I started fighting back. So anytime I heard the word Nazi, well, I went apeshit. And I started hurting people. Doing whatever I could. And, as a child, even if you're with 4 or 5 guys beating the hell out of you, well, you try to take one of them out, or 2 of them, or at least you fight back. And I didn't know what the term Nazi meant. I just knew that if the word was mentioned, I was getting a bad ass kicking. So finally they kicked me out of that school, and we eventually, I think, the next year I went back to Germany to go to school there, and when I came back after that year of going to school in Germany, living with my grandmother again, and I don't think my uncle was still living there at the time, but life was good. The neighborhood kids and I got along fine because we all kind of grew up together from birth on, I guess, or small baby. So going back to America after that, by that time we were moving to Florida, which I believe was in 1967. So we moved to Florida, and my mother put me into another Catholic school. Now, it was still grade school, and the first year there, by now I'd learned English. I was doing pretty good. My schoolwork still suffered because reading and writing it was still a little bit hard, but I enjoyed reading, and things like Herbie the Love Bug books and stuff like that, and old stuff, that had pictures in it. I was interested in it, so I got good at it. And I always swore that I would drop the German accent and not sound like my mother, who still, to this day, or well, I don't know, I haven't talked to her in years and years, but she still has a heavy German accent, and I didn't want to come across like that. Could have meant an ass beating. So anyway, I went to St. Ambrose in Deerfield Beach, Florida, and the first year was pretty uneventful. And I'd made a couple friends, and of course I wasn't part of the in crowd, the cool crowd, whatever. And well, I went back to Germany after that for another year at school, and after that year I came back and went to the same Catholic school. Well, a few months in, a lot of people, a lot of the kids were making fun of my mother, or not, they were making fun of me because my mother had big breasts. I mean, your typical model, She had the big breasts and everything else, so I had to put up with that, which, okay, you know, tried to behave. I even became an altar boy, believe it or not. And one day out, you know, we're out at recess or whatever you want to call it, playground, you know, and this one kid who was a real asshole anyway, you know, he got into it with me about some game we were playing out there, and he called me a Nazi, you know, and got in my face, and I just went apeshit. I mean, I totally fucked this kid up. He had to be taken away in an ambulance, and, you know, I got called into the office, of course, you know. Tried to explain myself, but nope, they wouldn't hear it. And the head priest, never forget this fucker's name, Irish ex-boxer, big old dude. Well, of course, I was a little guy, so whatever, but he was a boxer, an ex-boxer, Father Connaughton. He gets me in the office, and he starts smacking me around like, I mean, you wouldn't believe. I mean, in the face, and just hard as hell, and knocking me down, and, you know, I'm surprised he didn't kick me, or maybe he did, I don't remember. And then they called my mother later in the afternoon after all the red had gone down, and I tried to tell my mother what had gone on, and they told her that they didn't want me back in school. So my mother slapped me around like crazy. Well, I got kicked out, went into, by now I think that was middle school, which was a public middle school, and it was a common area type school, which that was a whole new thing. You know, people didn't know my past, they didn't know my mother, they didn't know my, you know, anything, and by now I'd lost the accent. I was very fluent in English, and it went from there. But people still, you know, anytime somebody got stupid with me, not with the Nazi thing, but with anything else, well, they got an ass beating. So, yeah, I continued getting in a lot of fights, and it escalated later on in life, too. But, you know, when that priest, that head priest, and thinking back to the nuns and the way everything else happened, I thought to myself, you know, these hypocritical assholes talking about the love of God and how pure and innocent, you know, all this happy horseshit out of the Bible and crap, and what a bunch of phony fuckers they were. And the reality of it was that, to me, if there was a God, it wasn't the one they were talking about. And that was what set me on my path to being an agnostic. And, you know, I'd say, okay, you can say, well, maybe I'm a atheist, but anti-theist is anti-organized religion. Doesn't mean I don't believe in a higher power, or, you know, whatever, possibly, or I'm hopeful of one, but it isn't a benevolent being that they make it out to be, and they certainly don't follow the tenets of that religion. So I thought, you know, this is something that in my life isn't going to have any input, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite like these people are. You know, and I've even seen it with born-again Christians, you know, which claim that, oh, it's okay to fuck people over all day long as you ask forgiveness at the end of the day. Now, look, if they honestly believe that, then they believe their God is dumber than dirt, because that doesn't fly. So anyway, I claim more of the agnostic ideology, if you will, you know, or because I have no proof that there is or is not a God, or, you know, a higher power, or anybody that's watching over us, and you know, so I don't intend to prove that there is or isn't. It's just very up in the open that, again, Anybody can believe what they want, just don't push it on me. So, there you go. A little bit of background and, you know, how things transpired. And, you know, another thing I might mention is that, you know, the way people are flinging the word Nazi around nowadays could get them into a world of shit. Because I know that nowadays, I mean, if you call me a Nazi, I'll just tell you, yeah, okay, sure, fine, I am. You know, it doesn't bother me that much anymore. But if somebody were to really get in my face about it, the end result may not be well, because I don't know if I'd pop or not. And, you know, I really don't want to go there. So be careful of this Nazi calling shit or calling people certain names, because sometimes it goes a lot deeper than what you think of the goose-stepping brown shirts of the, you know, 1939 start of the Nazis, or 37, whenever. This isn't a game, people, you know, and name-calling is really for children. As I can attest, that's what happened. It was children doing the name-calling. Now, adults should know better than that, but obviously people are growing in age, but they're not maturing. They're not growing up as adults. So anyway, there you go, folks. There's a little bit of a rant and a ramble about my past, my upbringing, and it just touches on that one type of, you know, what happened during my youth. But this is why I look at things the way I do. You're not going to change my mind. So again, please do not give me a bunch of comments trying to change my mind. Anyway, I hope everybody has a fantastic day. I think I'm done for a while now with my firesides. We're due for some rain. And enjoy your weekend, people. Have a good one. Talk to you all later.